You're watching NCTV. This is Anne-Marie Battistone, state and local. I have a guest today who is running in a big primary for the seat that Joe Kennedy is vacating because he wants to go to Congress. I think he's running against Markey, I believe. But my guest is Ben Sigel, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his candidacy, about himself. And I'm very happy to have him because I almost never can get a Democrat to come on with me, and this is an honor. So, hi, how are you, Ben?
Good, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for for letting me come on. It's an honor for me too.
Now, so tell me, I was on Facebook, and now you're Hispanic?
I am. My mom was born and raised in Puerto Rico, 7 generations.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I would be literally, Anne-Marie, it's amazing. I'd be the first Latino ever elected to Congress from Massachusetts.
Huh. So are your people? So you're Jewish, or your people come back from the Spanish, from the Spanish Jews? Is that where you go back to that?
Each side is different. My mom's family, as I said, we know it's at least 7th generation, but we think it was as much as 9 to 11 generations, but originally from Portugal and Spain. Okay. And my dad's family, 3rd generation from Worcester. And before that, somewhere in the Ukraine, Russia, Poland area.
So is your dad is Jewish?
Both my parents are Jewish.
Because what was that like for her? Has she ever talked about being Jewish in Puerto Rico because it's so overwhelmingly Catholic?
No, look, first of all, there's a synagogue in Bayamon. She's from Bayamon. In San Juan, there's a synagogue where my cousins actually were the janitors who worked there. My mom grew up actually not Jewish. She had converted here when she came up to New York. But we actually believe her whole family was Jewish. And they were in Spain and Portugal during the Inquisition.
They were conversos.
Yes, exactly. And so, they didn't want to get killed. And so they likely had converted to Christianity. They moved to Puerto Rico. My mom's name from birth was Ruth Miriam. And my cousins worked at the synagogue as janitors. And, when she moved after Puerto Rico, she moved to Spanish Harlem, right on the border of Spanish Harlem, and then moved here as a nurse to the Boston area where she met my dad on a blind date.
Because my husband's people are from Puerto Rico, and he was born in Spanish Harlem, but then they moved up to where, I don't know if you know New York City very well, but they were up across from it's the Jewish hospital in New York. It's at the end of Madison Avenue, and I can't think of the name of it right now. You know the one I mean? It's a real famous.
There's several, so I'm not sure, but that's okay. So
now that's a very interesting history about the conversos. I mean, there were Jewish communities in Rome, and then there's quite a lot of Jewish communities in Cuba. But then I guess when they stopped allowing people, to worship, I don't know what happened to all those people. I don't know whether they're still now. They're trying to get back to, to worshiping. So did you grow up speaking Spanish at all?
No, my mom is of the generation of almost like Julian Castro, right? Which we saw running for president. His parents too. When we moved here, you assimilated, and I grew up in Braintree. Braintree is very similar to the majority of the 34 cities and towns in this district. I grew up as one of the only Jewish kids in my school, and one of the only, if not only, Latino kids. And so my parents really felt like, you're already getting picked on for being Jewish. Maybe we don't want the Latino. And as you can see, my skin's a little lighter in my color. My mom is darker and my brother are darker, but my skin's a little lighter. So there was a lot of just making sure that we fit in as a family, unfortunately. So I did take Spanish. I understand it to a certain degree, but I didn't grow up speaking it at all.
Because when I saw that, and then I looked at you, I said, "Oh, right." I saw the Latino in you because I used to teach Spanish. I taught most of my students were what they call them heritage speakers now, but they were native speakers, and so I taught Spanish to them. So now there's 9 people going. How do you think this is all going to shake out? Do you think this is going to be? When do you think people are going to start, leaving and making the group a little bit easier to deal with as far as competition?
I don't think anyone's going to drop out. I mean, we're running under COVID-19, right? So you can run a virtual campaign in a way that you didn't need to before. Look, I think they're very strong candidates in this race. I think I differentiate myself very much from all of them. Look, I was the first candidate, and I believe still the only, to visit all 34 cities and towns in this district, including Norfolk, which was the last on my stop at Celia's Coffee House. And I really enjoyed that. And you saw, Anne-Marie, we met at the town election. I'm running because the people of Norfolk and the other similar cities and towns in the 4th district, they need someone who's going to be their voice. We're the voice of everyone. And we haven't had that. I don't think Norfolk has had that in the past. And I want to change that. It's why the theme of our campaign is We the 4th. We're all in this together. We are all connected to all the issues. We may differ on how we want to correct those issues and fix them, but we're all connected. And I think the foundation of any strong community is access to opportunities. It's what binds us all. You could be the wealthiest person in the district, the most vulnerable person in the district. We want access to high quality, affordable health care, high quality, affordable education, affordable transportation and housing. These are all things that we're connected. And I think, Anne-Marie, we need a leader who's a unifier, a bridge builder, a connector, and someone who honestly understands the diverse perspectives of the community and can stand in the shoes of the majority of the community. And I think that's me. I mean, I grew up middle class, blue collar family in Braintree. I'm the president of the Hispanic National Bar Association.
Really?
Yes, for all of New England. I've worked for the Democratic Caucus, helping to promote a national Democratic agenda. I've worked as a private attorney for the last 15 plus years as the national director of all client and community relations. And I've sat on the boards of over a dozen nonprofit boards. I tell you those because I think you would agree with me. In order to solve the big problems of the day, you need the nonprofit, private sector, and the government working together. And having someone that understands that experience and is a unifier is exactly what we need today.
Now, where did you go to law school?
So right after college, I went to Middlebury College up in Vermont.
I went to Middlebury.
You went to
Middlebury?
Middlebury?
I got my master's degree.
Oh my God.
I got my master's in Spanish from Middlebury.
I love it.
Oh, it's a fabulous place.
Oh, it's beautiful. So I went there for 3 of my 4 years. My junior year, I studied in Israel for the year. And I studied at Hebrew University, where I actually met my wife, who's from LA. And so we've been now best friends for over 23 years. We have 4 young kids, an 8th grader, 6th grader, 4th grader, and 1 going into kindergarten. And then after school, I worked at the DCCC, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and Democratic Caucus. And then I went to law school and business school at American University.
No kidding. America, isn't that a funny coincidence? That's right down the street from my house, my parents' house.
Oh, I love that. Where did they live? What street?
Well, actually, they were, I shouldn't say right down the street. They were on River Road at 42nd. And in those days, the big Sears was up there. It was called Tenleytown, was the name of the neighborhood. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, of course.
They also called it Friendship Heights.
Yes.
Oh, what a funny thing.
Oh, yeah. So I lived right around there and went to school there for 4 years.
What street did you live on?
So we lived in Georgetown on 25th and Q.
Oh, okay.
Which was really wonderful. We lived in a rent-controlled apartment complex. It was honestly one of the most wonderful places we've lived. And then after I finished business school, we moved back up here in 2003, and we've lived in Brookline since then.
You know, I was going to say, when you said Georgetown, I was going to say, wow, that's, but I didn't realize they had any rent control down there. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Now, if there's 9 of you running in this primary, how do people distinguish themselves? I mean, I think that was kind of an issue when there were all of the candidates running in the Republican primary in 2015. 2016, and people were trying to distinguish themselves. And I would think that the Democrats would be more cohesive than Republicans are. So is that an issue of trying to distinguish yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we're all trying to distinguish ourselves, right? When you look at the issues, we're all not that far apart on the main issues. There's a little bit of difference on the main issues, but I think it's the approach. And that's why I started off by saying to you, look, I'm the only candidate who's visited all 34 cities and towns. That's a different approach. And I got into the race 4 months after 6 of the other candidates. You know, I'm the only one who's Latino, we've talked about. I'm the only one who grew up in a blue-collar, middle-class family in a suburb of Boston. I'm one of the only ones who have worked in the private sector, public sector, and has worked in nonprofits. These are big pieces, you know, so it's one of the things we're all trying to figure out is how to connect to voters under COVID-19, right? We've all been away, and that's why I visited over a dozen of the town elections. I've been part of over 20 marches, rallies, and vigils since the murder of George Floyd as part of the community. Because we're seeing the community all stand up together very nicely right now, speaking up, standing out, and trying to use the collective power of their voice. So I think there are massive differences in how we're approaching. One of my ideas is once I'm elected will be to create an advisory board made up of representatives from all 34 cities and towns, including Norfolk, that is diverse intergenerationally, racially, and economically, so that I can honestly sit and say I'm learning and listening to the voices of these communities all the time and moving forward. Because whether you're Republican or Democrat, we have so much in common. There's actually not that much that's different, and we all want something better for our families. So let's figure that out. If we're different on 80% of the issues, let's work on the 20% we're the same on, and let's get stuff done.
Now, will you have to go through the legislature to start that advisory board?
No, I wouldn't. As an advisory board,
Really?
I can create a sounding board for myself and how I'm going to legislate and govern as the next member of Congress from the 4th District.
Now, you mentioned you were thinking about starting an advisory board with somebody from each of the 34 towns. How would you go about, I mean, that seems like a big job. How would you go about, can they have any input without being recognized by the legislature?
Yeah, this isn't, this would be a volunteer type position, right? If you're someone that cares about your community, like you do in Norfolk, you want to make sure the voices of the people in Norfolk are going to be heard, right? And instead of maybe seeing your member of Congress once a year or seeing them at a barbecue, or that's nice, you actually are going to sit with others. And I have experience with this. I actually created, for the first time in the entire country, something called the Young Jewish Leaders Council, which brought together all 40 plus young adult Jewish organizations in Massachusetts around one table. And one of the reasons for that was to work on collaboration and learning best practices and learning and trusting each other, because we all have similar issues. So let's learn from each other on how to do that. And it works with better collaboration. And so that's what this council would be about, choosing several, not just one, several people from each of the towns to learn from each other. And not just help me understand what are the big issues of the day. So some of them would be elected officials, some of them wouldn't be. We need to have our high school and college students around the table, just like we need to have our older and wiser members of our community around the table.
Now, I'm just curious, you just mentioned that. Is there much age difference between the different candidates, or are you all fairly younger people?
We're fairly younger. I think I'm the 3rd oldest, which is amazing. So I think there are 2 a little older than me in their 50s. I don't know everyone's exact age. And then the rest, the other 5 are younger than I am. But, we're all in the same kind of pack and coming with different experiences as well. I will tell you, though, I've been very impressed by the group that is running. It's a group that actually likes each other and is in for the right reasons, which is really wonderful.
Now, so what do you, I'm very curious about this advisory board. I mean, I think it's very creative. I mean, are you going to plan to organize those meetings yourself, do you think, or will you let them do it, or how do you think that's going to shake out? Or how could it shake out?
Look, I think the way it's going to be is it will be a lot easier if it's coming from us organizing it. So I think 4 to 6 times a year, we will organize it. We will figure out who's going to sit on that. We'll invite those individuals to come and be a part of it. And we'll have an agenda talking about real issues and how we can better our community. I mean, we have real issues going on here. I mean, transportation going down to the mid and south part of the district, housing, mental health, the opiate crisis, education, the inequality and the education gap right now is huge. We see this with healthcare as well. I mean, there's some big issues that every town and city is dealing with. Let's do it together.
What is your take on the inequality gap with education?
Well, look, I'll give you a couple of numbers. Right now, 10% of Massachusetts K through 12 doesn't have internet. 20% of the students don't have a device. So here we are virtually learning, and these kids aren't able to do it because they're not on the same foundation as everyone else without internet and without a device.
You mean a device provided by the school?
Yes, in a lot of cases, it's the school or the family. There are wealthy individuals and those well off who have devices of their own, but there's many that don't. And so that's a big gap. We also have, I don't know if you know this, but in Massachusetts last year, actually it was 2018, Massachusetts scored #1 on math for 8th graders across the board. But if you were Latino, which is 20% of the student population, we scored 50th, the 50th state. So we have a huge gap between those, that are learning and understanding and those that not. Part of it is we could have more diversity in our teachers. So for instance, 20% of our students, I told you, are Latino. Only 3% of the teachers are K through 12. And so
you mean in the fully integrated program? You're not talking about, they've kind of done away with the bilingual, I guess, from junior high up.
No, in public schools, generally in public schools, right? Some schools clearly don't have that percentage. They've done very well. And a lot of schools don't even have the 3%. But that's across the board. And what that tells you is we want more leaders that know, understand, look like, and understand their students to help them be more successful. And that's a big gap right now. We know schools are falling with their infrastructure, right? We know some schools haven't been touched in 50 years. They don't have clean air. They don't have clean water. They're dangerous places to be in, yet our students are learning there. We need to help with narrowing those gaps. We know our teachers in some of the tougher neighborhoods are not getting paid enough to even pay for their own rent. So we need to support our teachers, just like we need to support the infrastructure, and we need to support the students as well.
Is it a matter of the neighborhood or is it a matter of the city? Because I worked for the city of Boston. And when I started in 72, I made 8,000 something. But then when I left, I was making close to 100, because of my degrees and if you include in this. So you must be talking about the towns not paying the teachers.
Yeah, no, it's very different in each of the towns and cities. Look, if you're in a town or city that doesn't have a lot of revenue coming in, and we know that's happening even more now under COVID-19, right? Brookline pink slipped over 300 teachers several weeks ago. Taunton just pink slipped 150 teachers 2 weeks ago. We know that these towns and cities are hurting when it comes to revenues coming in. And one of the places they're cutting is education, right? And part of that is going to include salaries. If you don't have the money to pay your teachers, you're just not going to be able to do that. And so the federal government needs to be more helpful to give incentives for our smartest students graduating college and grad school and people like yourself who are going to go in and want to teach, but who now decide not to teach because they know they can't pay the rent or their utilities in order to do that. And part of that, Anne-Marie, I think you know this, is the student debt. It's so expensive to go to school. And that's why, and look, I'm someone that still has significant student debt. And it's why I believe two things. One, in terms of the rates at which students are getting loan money, they're paying between 6 and 11%. And we know banks loan each other out at 1.2 to 1.6. Students should get those same rates. Number two, we need to cap at a very low amount people's student debt at a percentage of their income. So whether that's 5% or 8% of their income, so that they can actually go out and work, still pay back those loans, but they don't feel the burden of, do I pay back my school loans or do I get food and pay for rent? We can do that and make it more accessible and affordable. And you asked us about the gap in education. Right now, for the first time in decades, fewer Black and brown students are going to college because it's not affordable and accessible, and they can get higher paying jobs without going to college. We need to change that and turn that around to give them not only jobs that are affordable, but also the skills for 21st century jobs. We need to make sure we're doing that for everyone.
Now, are you glad that there are more Blacks and Hispanics working than ever?
I'm glad
their unemployment rate is as low as it's ever been.
Well, we have.
I mean, that must be.
Well, I don't think the unemployment rate for anyone under COVID-19 is as great as it's ever been.
I meant before all this happened.
Look, we were living in a time where the jobs were great, right? Unemployment rate in Massachusetts was the lowest we've seen ever.
Yes.
But let's talk about that a little bit. Just having a job doesn't mean you have a job that gives you the right living standard. Number two, before COVID, Anne-Marie, we knew this. Governor Baker talked about this. There were 200,000 open jobs and 130,000 people looking for jobs. So why can't we match that? There's many, many reasons, but I think there are two we need to focus on. Number one is that 130,000 didn't have the skills for that 200,000 open jobs. So one of my proposals is to make federal investments in free adult education to give those adults the skills and training they need to go into the open jobs that are there. That's great for our economy. That's great for their families. The second reason is we actually have a lot of immigrants who actually have those skills, but don't have the English proficiency. And so, and one of the reasons is we have wait lists for English classes in Massachusetts, and they're not affordable. So here are open jobs. They're gonna help the economy, help tax revenues in our cities and towns, and we have people with the skills. We need to just help them have English more proficient so they can take those jobs.
Well, you know, the Hispanics that are not as old as I am, but, you know, the Hispanics, I'm trying to think, when in 72, I was teaching in Roxbury, and there was an entire wing. And in those days, there weren't so much Dominicans and Cubans as Puerto Ricans. And it was a whole wing of the building. Nobody spoke English over there. And I felt that those teachers sold the parents a bill of goods of keeping them in those Spanish language classes for their own benefit. That's just me personally. And I felt it was really a disgrace how long it took for them to move them quickly into English classes.
Yeah, look, I can't comment on that other than to say, look, there's a lot of barriers to language around here, right? And it takes families a long time, and they should really be connected, I think, to their culture and their identity and their language. It's what's beautiful about the United States and Massachusetts, quite honestly, in particular, of the amounts of languages we have and the cultures. It makes us all richer. But we also need to make sure we're giving them the support services around language in order for them to strive, because it's not just for them. It helps the neighborhoods. It helps the community. It helps the economy, right? So it's all in our interest to make sure. We've seen barriers on the language side under COVID-19. Look, we know the Black and brown communities are contracting COVID-19 at double and triple the rates. We know they're getting tested less, they're getting treated less, and they're getting personal protection equipment less. Part of that is some of the language barriers, right? That's not because someone's necessarily, some people are, you know, there's multiple reasons for that, and we need to be able to help those communities because it lifts up all of us. We're only as strong as the most vulnerable in our community.
Well, that wouldn't be the case for Black Americans. I mean, they shouldn't be getting less treatment.
Oh, but the statistics have shown that. I mean, if you look where a lot of our inner city and our Black and brown communities are living, they have less access to quality food. They have less access to an education inequality gap. They have less access to hospitals and healthcare at the same level that you and I do in some of these communities. We know that across the board. And so they're not getting the same attention, and we need to do a better job about that.
Because I mean, I've always the times when I've been in the, I mean, I've been in City Hospital. I mostly go to the Brigham and Women's, and I always see a lot of minorities. And of course, there's City Hospital is right there on it's on Shawmut Avenue. I'm not sure. I know it's right there in the South End.
You're thinking of Boston Medical Center, BMC.
Yes. Yes.
No, you look, just because what your version of coming in and seeing that view doesn't mean that that's going to lay out for the statistics that are out there. I mean, I don't even have to talk about the statistics. People know what they are on there. And it's why we're connected, all of these things, right? There is really systematic racism in lots of our systems. We've already talked about healthcare. We've talked about education, but we have it in transportation too. You know, there are the kind of better end communities that have better high-speed transportation. Fall River is a great example. We still don't have South Coast Rail. 20% of Fall River doesn't own a vehicle. So they have to take public transportation, right? And here we are, the hub, which we all know of the higher paying jobs are in Boston. So how do we help people get to Boston faster, more efficiently, and more cost effective? You need to have the high-speed rail or buses that allow for that. We see that in housing. We know, look, my dad worked for HUD for 20 years, overseeing public housing authorities and auditing them, including in Taunton and Fall River. We know when public housing was created, it was segregated, right? We segregated these housing things in an area instead of building housing that's for everyone, affordable housing, market rate, standardized housing, and housing around transportation hubs. That's the community we all want to live in, one that is welcoming and open to everyone and moving everyone forward, because it's better. At the end of the day, it's better for all of us.
You know, I was still teaching. I remember when they integrated the South Boston projects, and it was tough. I mean, a lot of people did. Plenty of people didn't want to go. I mean, they did not want to be in that situation just so somebody else could say, well, we integrated, the South Boston projects, but they sent them. They didn't have any choice.
Look, we know the history of Boston. It's not a good history when it comes to race. It's an ugly history. But let's be very clear. No one is born a racist. No one is born to hate. No one is born an anti-Semite. We teach that in our communities, right? We need to unteach that from day one. And that is part of that is integrating some of this. Because if you learn from day one that lies, stereotypes, and prejudice can turn into hate and a lot worse, you're never gonna become a racist or a bigot or hatred. And if we teach cultural competency and we teach bias training, explicit and implicit, we're all going to be in a place that we understand each other more. But when we segregate that out, that's hard to do. If you're not in a community where people look different than you, come from different perspectives, we're not going to learn that. And that's the same for those being conservative and those being progressive. We need to talk to each other more. We need to understand what we're trying to do, because I think we're going to find far more in common that we can move forward. And that's racially, that's politically, that's religiously. There's so much there that we have in common.
Well, I think the ad hominem attacks need to stop. I know I've been in a lot of conversations where I was just shut up because I didn't agree with the other side. But, talking about, these groups and all, I mean, I remember when I ended up at West Roxbury High School, we had Haitian kids there. And, the African-Americans were terrible to them. And they were also very hard on the Hispanics. They were very envious of the Hispanics. And yet, they all lived in proximity. But it was an interesting situation.
Look, I don't think there's any group that isn't having problems with this, right? Which is, we got to learn to love each other, right? And not find the things that are different about us. That's white people and black people and brown people. That's everyone. Those are part of the LGBTQ community, and those that are allies and those that are not. And the only ways we're going to do that is to get to know each other more and to find the issues that are important to all of us, right? And we have to learn that from the beginning. And I don't think we work on that. And it causes more problems in our economy. It causes in our families, in our neighborhoods, in crime. We could go on in education and healthcare. If we could all move forward with this, we actually would live in a community we'd all be so proud of.
I think it's a tall order. But I mean, I guess it's worth, it's worth doing.
It's not going to happen overnight, no doubt, right? There's no switch, right? But let's give a good example, right? One of the first things I would do after being elected to Congress is I want to pass paid family and medical leave, right? We're the only industrialized country in the world not to have paid family and medical leave. That's not a Republican issue. That's not a Democrat issue. That is an issue that affects all of us.
But people have vacation time that they get. I know that I think it was under Clinton that he put that people had to have time off from work to go to the school to talk to their kids, parents, and their kids' teachers.
Very different than paid family and medical leave, where if you're sick and you're making minimum wage, right, and you can't decide whether to put food on your table or you have to go to work sick, which then you spread whatever it is that you're sick to the others in that company and organization. Now they have economic problems. They're also unhealthy. That's something we don't want. I mean, we saw that in one of the pork distribution facilities in the Midwest that shut down completely because of one older man who didn't have enough money to put food on the table that went in sick and knew he was sick. So there is family and medical leave, but you just can't get fired. You can't get paid, right? You're not going to get paid during that. We're going to start this in Massachusetts in just over a year. We'll have it in Massachusetts, but federally, we need that. You need to be able to take care of your sick parents if, God forbid, they get sick, or if you're having a baby. I mean, my wife worked for the federal government for 10 years, and for 2 of our kids, we didn't get 1 day of paid family and medical leave, not 1 day. And we're lucky because we're 2 working parents in professional jobs. If we were both making minimum wage, we wouldn't have been able to feed our family.
So she would have had to take vacation time?
Correct. Vacation time and sick time. If you have sick time and you're lucky to have that, but you don't have enough for that. I mean, I don't know if you have children or not, but it's not something you can generally run back to in a week or 2 weeks. This takes a lot of time.
Oh, with a baby, certainly, yeah.
Exactly. So being able to have that opportunity, but we need to help small businesses with paying for it. I think there's 2 ways. We can't put the weight of paying for paid family and medical leave just on the backs of the small businesses.
No.
Because that would be unfair. So we need to find a way that helps those small businesses. Because look, if you're a happy and healthy employee, we all know that you're more productive, right? And you're a better family person at home and you're a better employee in the office. So let's make that happen.
Thank you. It was very interesting talking to you. Very fascinating. And as I say, I'm glad to have a Democrat come on. I can't get anybody from the Norfolk Democratic Town Committee. I don't know why, but I'm glad that you came on. Good luck to you.
Oh, thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it. And look, for our viewers, if people like what they heard and want to know more, they can go to bensigelforcongress.com or follow us on social media like you did at Ben Sigel for Congress on Facebook or at Ben Sigel on Instagram and Twitter. So, Anne-Marie, thank you very much. I look forward to having more of these conversations with you as well.
Well, all right. Well, maybe you can come back. And thank you for being on the show. And thank you, everybody, for watching. This is State and Local. I'm Anne-Marie Battistone. My guest, Ben Sigel. He is running for the place vacated by Joe Kennedy. So look for him, and he's been around all the towns, so he's making good effort. And thank you for watching NCTV.